I got terrific advice from a man named Bill Deek, who you know, who
sure.
is a great resource. I think he's read every mystery ever written. He lives outside of Bethesda, and he said in the beginning that, you know, okay, the kid thing is all right, but just make sure that they aren't cute, and that they don't appear much. And I thought that was very good advice, because they, you know, that can be very icky. Who was it? You know, Oscar Wilde, children are delightful, but they're so sticky after tea. You know that.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Well,
yeah.
I agree that, you know, at least, especially a small child is not really going to be able to contribute to the advancement of your story.
No.
You could conceivably, with older children, in fact, it's often done
Yes.
very well
Yeah.
with children.
Yes,
you
I
know,
can think of a lot of
old enough to
stories.
observe, and you know, they can leak information. They can go places and discover things.
Yeah,
and
but
all.
a toddler is just going to get in the way. Yeah.
Right.
I did learn something from the first book. Someone asked recently whether I'd ever had negative fan mail, and I've only had 2 letters that have been negative, which I think is pretty amazing. Maybe the other ones the publisher just doesn't send me, I don't know. But the first one was right after The Body in the Belfry came out. And there was a woman who was upset because I had put an infant at peril. And my first reaction was to think, well, my goodness, what would she think, that I would kill off what I hoped would be a series character and her baby? You know, and my books have, I hope, a lot of humor in them, and they are locked in a preserves cabinet, you know, and it's very obvious that they're going to get out. But I realized that there was this comfort level for her and for probably a whole lot of other people about even the notion of an infant being in that kind of a situation, and that was really not the kind of book I write or that I wrote. And
or that his mother would put him in danger.
Or that his mother would put
right.
him in danger. And so I've never done anything since then that at all involved the children, or, you know, they're not really in that. The other letter that was negative was that I wrote a book called The Body in the Fjord that's set in, I mean The Body in the Vestibule, that's set in France. And there are French words in it, but I was very careful to make the context obvious so you'd know what the French words were, or even translate in parentheses. And I got a letter from a Lutheran minister in Minneapolis objecting to all of the French words. And then also he thought that there was too much sex in the series. And
in your books?
I know, exactly. I thought, sex, you know, what's sex? It's so...
The bedroom door
yes,
closes,
I know,
that's
exactly,
about it,
that's
right?
about it. Tom and Faith look at each other and go upstairs, or they say, oh, thank God the children are asleep, or, you know, something like that. And then this business, and then there was a PS and said, if Faith has to go someplace, why doesn't she go to Norway? So then I immediately thought it was my cousin in St. Paul sending me, you know, some funny letter through the publisher. And I called her and she said no. She said, I would have done it if I thought about it. And she looked him up and directory was an actual, but I laughed. I thought that was so funny. And eventually I did write a book called The Body in the Fjord. My mother's family they're Norwegian Americans. And but Pix, her Faith's next door neighbor, is the one who goes to Norway, because Faith couldn't just leave 2 small children and go off to Norway.
Well, you've in fact brought Pix forward, what?
Yeah, she was in twice. She was in The Body in the Basement, which was set on the coast of Maine, a mythic island off the coast of Maine. And that book I really enjoyed writing. When I started thinking about that book, I wanted to write a book that was intergenerational, and so it's her octogenarian mother, Ursula, Pix's mother, Ursula, and her teenage daughter. The 3 women, just by happenstance, are there for most of a month. You know, Pix's husband's working, her son is at camp, and so it's kind of the 3 women, and the 3 together each provide a piece of the puzzle. And so there was that book, The Body in the Basement.
Which was an advantage to having. One thing you said to me earlier today, which I think is very true, is that readers get attached not just to your major characters, but to your minor characters.
Yeah, I begin to think of them as a sort of an ensemble theater troupe, and it's fun to bring people back. And I have a new character in this book, and in The Body in the Bookcase was the first appearance, Patsy Avery. And that character has been becoming more and more of a major character. She's a young African-American lawyer who, with her husband, moves to the Boston suburbs, and Faith, they become close friends. And in the book I just finished, The Body and the Bonfire, she's a major part of this whole. There's a boy who is being kind of victimized, a hate crime at a local private school, and so, you know, that's. New characters are kind of fun to bring in, but the old ones, you know, the Ursula, you know, Ursula will never die. Pix's mother will never die.
Well, of course, but you know, you can, as you say, you can move things off stage as well as move them on.
They're
You can
not
send
in
them on
every book.
trips.
Oh yes, they can always go in. That's why fiction, you know, fiction is so nice because you're in total control. It's so unlike life. You just, there you are. And the ending, I think, you know, I'm sure you've talked about this on this show before, but why people like to read mysteries.
Well, what's your version?
Well, my version is the P.D. James quote, which is a lovely, lovely quote, and that she said, especially in times like these, I think she emphasized that people like to read mysteries as a reminder that we live in a beneficent universe, which is just lovely.
Which is why she likes justice.
Yeah.
In the classic form,
yes,
to occur
yes.
in her book. She is not leaving, you know. Well,
No.
That's not totally true. There was a chance in her last book, the one that was set in the temple.
Okay, I haven't read that one.
There is her brand new one, Death and Holy
Oh no,
Orders,
that's
wonderful.
It's
And
wonderful.
It is. It's just now come out.
Yeah, that I think, I don't know. I think it may be my favorite.
Well, it's a remarkable book, and
It is.
interestingly enough, can be really read as if she, you know, she doesn't write another.
Yeah.
It can be read in many ways as a farewell book. I mean, you get to learn more about her and more about Dalgleish as a human being.
It's really a tour de force. I think that book is. But people, I mean, I think, you know, you have solutions, and life doesn't always offer these solutions, and the wicked are punished, and, you know, the
and the classic mystery.
Yeah, and the classic mystery. And I write a classic mystery. I write the traditional domestic classic mystery type. What would be called a village mystery in another time.
Right. Well, I didn't finish my thought, but in the P.D. James set, and I'm going blank as to the name of this last one, the one that takes place in the temple, there is a character, in fact, who is guilty of a crime that, you know, doesn't come to classic justice, and that's a little unnerving and even in the TV adaptation, it was interesting to see Roy Marsden as Dalgleish sort of saying, you know, there's no way we can really punish this person, but, you know, we'll leave him to, you know, his conscience or God or whatever you want to feel. But that's unusual for her, and I do think you write a classic mystery in that sense, you know, the P.D. James sense.
Well, those are the mysteries I enjoyed, and I enjoyed, you know, always reading. And when someone once said, well, oh, you must have loved Nancy Drew. Well, I really never read Nancy Drew because I read what was in the house, and my parents, they weren't big mystery readers, but they had some Agatha Christie's. My brother loved everything Conan Doyle. I read all of those Sherlock Holmes. I read everything that was around. And somehow, you know, and the librarian would always give me books, and I read everything in the world. You know, I get panicky if I don't have a book to read. You know,
Me too, going to withdrawal. Well, for your series, had you read some of the classical antecedents of this kind of series? Had you read Rex Stout? Had you read Virginia Rich? Yes.
Well, I loved Virginia Rich. I loved Rex Stout, and I mean, of course, Dorothy Sayers. But I noticed this was on your bookshelf in the store. Two women writers, non-mystery writers, who influenced me, three, I should say, were Nancy Mitford, and E.M. Delafield, Diary of a Provincial Lady, and then Eudora Welty, just in terms of the craft of writing and just being able to pick the words, and those three. And Nancy Mitford, it was the sense of humor, that wonderful sense of humor and that take on life. I still read, you know, Death in a Cold Climate and all of the Nancy Mitford books, you know, at least every other year, if not every year.